Okay, hi, this is Kyle with kayDbait again. I wanted to do the second version of the second layer of this video now on gay marriage and the Supreme Court rulings tomorrow. I was already talking about the slippery slope argument being used for the argument against why gay marriage should be allowed, and my thoughts on that being that our culture would have to change for that to be even considered, let alone implemented into law. So I dismiss that as an argument simply on the basis that it is so unlikely to happen that it should not be used as a limitation for what people are actively calling a moral standard of human rights. And there are other arguments, and I'll give some other arguments in a second. I'm just trying to gather my wits. Some of the other arguments are that it is a blasphemy to God. And if you use that argument, then you are making it a religious argument as opposed to a political one. And in the Constitution, you are not allowed to make a law that favors one religious persuasion. So it's also specifically saying that you are not allowed to limit somebody's religious rights. So if you are using this argument to make it religious, then you are specifically making a law that is unconstitutional. So you morally should not make that argument, and politically cannot make that argument for a basis for law. You can make it if you are in a theocratic government. You can make it for certain forms of government, but right now making that argument is unconstitutional and therefore should not be used. Now, if you ask for the Constitution to be changed, that is very different than making a law that goes against the Constitution. You can make a change to the Constitution. And if the Supreme Court rules that Prop 8 is unconstitutional, there will be people trying to change the Constitution to make it so it is unconstitutional to be married to the same gender. And they have every right to attempt that. So I assume that will be attempted if Prop 8 is struck down by the Supreme Court. Now, on that same note, if the Supreme Court passes, it's not really passing anything, it's allowing people to marry the same gender, then what are the implications to that? The counter arguments are pretty basic. They've been said everywhere constantly. But what are the actual implications? Not just the arguments people have made, because that's not necessarily an implication, that's just an opinion. The one main implication I see is that gay people will be allowed to get married anywhere, because it will effectively negate every kind of ban on gay marriage. And then there would be a massive influx of people getting married. Federal law will be changed, because that's what a Supreme Court ruling can do. It doesn't necessarily change the wording, but it changes the meaning. And they might put a little asterisk here that's saying what it means. And that in effect, it's done a lot. So the Supreme Court rules on a lot of things, and it makes a premise, a foundation for what the law should mean. And people use that for making court rulings, for making new laws, and stuff like that. So if Prop 8 is shut down and the Supreme Court rules in favor of anyone being allowed to get married of a consenting age and gender not being important, then that would mean that gay marriage will be allowed. There will be a lot of backlash emotionally, there will be a lot of backlash politically, there will be a lot of rejoicing by the people that feel that this has been a long time coming, and then there will be a lot of anger from the people that feel that this is a slap in the face of every religious organization that is against this, saying, I'm going to leave the country, or I'm going to fight this, or I'm going to go beat up somebody that supported this, and things like that. That happens when any law gets passed, really. This one just on a much larger scale, because it affects a lot more people personally and a lot of people emotionally. The personal part being not just the people that are allowed to get married, but also the people that religions are being, what's the word? It's not being spat on, because that's way too strong a word, but it's being weakened, insulted, what's the word? It's just not being favored. People of certain religious persuasions are extremely anti-gay marriage, and therefore will see this as an attack on their religion, even though this is a political standpoint, a political law that has technically, I'm using air quotes, technically no basis on religious persuasion. Marriage is technically, I keep having to say that because people are going to get offended when I say this, it is technically a secular thing. Mainly because it is a government issued tax affecting piece of paper that you can get for about $60 in Vegas in like half an hour to a person you don't even know, and the religious ceremony is completely optional. You don't need music, you don't need a dress or a suit, you don't need your family to be there. You need like one witness, and that's like the signing of a will. It is a government issued paper. Now people are going to be offended by that because they're saying no, it's religious. But in this regard, in the Supreme Court ruling, it is not. They are not ruling on the religious implications. They are ruling on the political aspects of it. What politically should be, enforced. Because if you go off of the religious aspect, again, then it becomes a religious law, and the government is not allowed to make those. So the main arguments you can make for or against them are social. Is this good for our society? Is this bad for our society? And like any argument, you can make pros and cons for it. The slippery slope argument was the negative, and then the social uplifting is the positive one, tolerance kind of thing. Tolerance is generally seen as a good thing, but not all tolerance is seen as good, so you have that gray area there also. It's kind of a not so gray as in it can be abused kind of gray, where generally it's okay, but then if somebody starts abusing it, it can be really bad. Just like free speech. Free speech is generally seen as really, really good, but once you start getting into the jerks kind of category, you get, offended by somebody telling a rape joke in public, and then you kind of get really upset, and you say you shouldn't be able to say that, and you're like, well, I have the right of free speech, and then you get into that area where, stop saying that, it's offending me, and then somebody saying, well, stop oppressing me. And there's a lot of really neat arguments. I like these kinds of arguments. I like these kinds of discussions because they really bring people to the forefront of our intellect. You also get people to the back of the intellectual spectrum also arguing with each other about stuff that doesn't even make sense. But, those are fun people to watch too. Reality TV is hilarious. But also it makes me really sad. So anyway, I'm going to be making one more video, and then I'm going to let you guys talk about it. So take care, and peace.